So my topic was juvenile justice, and about 200,000 juveniles are tried as adults every year, according to Juvenile Law Center. And due to this, society is affected as a whole. So my major claim is sentencing juveniles as adults has a substantial harmful effect on society. To support this claim, my three supporting claims are: first, juveniles do not have the mental capacity to understand their actions or consequences. Second, juveniles are mistreated and abused in adult jails. And third, juveniles still have the chance to rehabilitate themselves. So my first supporting claim, juveniles do not have the mental capacity to understand their actions or consequences. Juveniles were proven to not be able to provide the judge or lawyer with sufficient information to defend themselves. And a study was run by Common Dreams, which juveniles were given intelligence tests and asked to respond to several hypothetical legal situations, such as whether to confess to a police officer. The results found that 1/3 of those 11 to 13 juveniles and 1/5 of those 14 to 15 juveniles could not understand the proceedings or help lawyers defend them. To support this as well, adolescents have much less information which they can develop, and their choices are less effective. The brain of juveniles is not yet fully developed, as they lack reasoning. According to the American Bar Association, scientists discovered that the teenage brain undergoes an overproduction of gray matter, which is the brain tissue that does the thinking. And during this period, there's a process called pruning as well, which is the brain discarding that gray matter rapidly. My second supporting claim is juveniles are mistreated and abused in adult jails. Juveniles are placed in cells with sex offenders and murderers. RT USA published an article stating that Michigan prison officials needlessly house juveniles inmates with adult convicts, where the guards ignored that the young inmates were sexually abused. It also published that the Michigan Department of Corrections has consistently failed to keep prisoners under the age of 18 separate from adult prisoners. Juveniles are at a high risk of rape in adult jails as well. As noted in the 2007 report of the National Prison Rape Elimination Act of Commission, juveniles are at the highest risk of being sexually abused while in confinement, and children housed in adult facilities are at an even higher risk of being victims of sexual abuse than the children retained in juvenile facilities. My third supporting claim is juveniles still have the chance to rehabilitate themselves. Many juveniles who are tried are never convicted of a crime again. Kirk Humbly, the supervising deputy district attorney for the juvenile division of the Santa Clara County's district attorney office, stated that, "Having been a prosecutor now for nearly 12 years, I have seen time and time again kids who were lost causes and turned their lives around. And 80% of the kids that come before us one time never come back." Juveniles are still undergoing changes physically, mentally, and emotionally. Physically, juveniles are still growing and are becoming stronger as well. Mentally, their mind is still developing, and due to their physical and mental changes, they are emotionally unstable. Due to my supporting claims, my major claim would be sentencing juveniles has a substantial harmful effect on society. Thank you.
All right, pretty solid identification of what the topic is. The proposition is okay. The general impact on society, I think it's stronger because of the supporting points than it is because of the main claim. It's clearer what it is you're saying when you get to those points, and they're pretty well laid out and signposted as you're in the body of the speech. So structurally, you're doing a pretty good job, and there are explanations on most of those points. The evidence, I think, is you have some pretty good evidence that you start off with. You've got information about the number of crimes that juveniles are charged with as adults. I thought that was pretty solid. What I thought was interesting, though, is that later on, you don't have the same kind of data in some of those other places. So, for instance, you mentioned about juveniles being housed with in adult prisons, and I didn't get any data there. I just got an example of the state of Michigan, apparently, and it sounds like Michigan's in trouble for violating procedures there, and that's what the complaint was about. So I'm not sure that that's standard operating procedure. That it happens, definitely, I mean, you can prove that it happens. The question is that something that's typical? And having had the data earlier, I was kind of expecting there to be some follow-up data that talked about that as well. One of the things that is also applicable, like on the first point and the third point, is that you've got some information talking about juveniles, whether or not they're capable or competent, or whether or not they're going to repeat crimes, but none of that evidence is specific to juveniles that are charged with as adults. It's just all just about juveniles in general. And I think that since you are making a particular argument, then there is usually a difference between juvenile offenders and juvenile offenders who are charged as adults, either because of the seriousness of the crime or because of the records that the juveniles have themselves, that I think you need some evidence that's a little bit more particular to that. That last quote, for instance, where the Santa Clara prosecutor says 80% of the kids, aren't going to be repeating a crime, I'm not sure if that 80% applies to the kids who get sentenced to as adults. It may apply to all juvenile crimes, and you can see then why applying it in this way is potentially a little bit problematic. When we talk about the reasoning processes next week, that'll be a good illustration of one of the points that we're talking about. It's kind of a violation of the categorical type of syllogisms that we're talking about. On the presentation, I think you're okay, maybe a little low-key. Maybe you could have a little bit more energy and be a little bit more forceful, but you're very clear for the most part. There was one little pronunciation thing that's awkward, and I'll let you listen to your speech again and see if you can pick it out.